To say the least, the BL world is weird. It is an ecosystem that is run by consistent visuals and text of marketing and advertisements. Even when we want to escape capitalism and the bombardment of advertisements, with some of our favorite stories and characters, we are forced to engage with this world without consent. The marketing goes from cars, resorts, metabolism surgeries, distilled sugar-free drinks, cat food, scooters, KFC for some reason, multiplex cinemas, chocolate snacks, shampoos, toothpaste, face serums, and about 50 other things I didn't even name. And there's no bigger culprit of this than probably the most infamous production house in the BL space, gmmtv. The production company behind gems like My School President, Sotis, Vice Versa, Last Twilight, A Tale of a Thousand Stars, but also My Year in the Gown and whatever this was. Anyway, I think it would be pretty reductive and completely disingenuous to claim that GMMTV is a bad production house, as nothing is that black and white, even though sometimes I allude to that. However, I think it is time to talk about the egregious product-centered storytelling that GMMTV has been on for years, going as far as setting up fan service events sponsored by KFC, toothpaste brand like Dente. So today we answer the age-old question, does GMMTV's shameless product placement and advertisement-led approach cheapen their characters and moments within our favorite shows? In today's video, I dive deep into the apocalypse or the adpocalypse we are bombarded with constantly as people who watch gay dramas, specifically BL dramas, and sometimes GL dramas as available. I also want to make the claim that this is not a GMMTV only issue. There are other production houses, however, GMMTV just happens to be one of the bigger ones that I'm more familiar with.
I also want to give a big shout out to the r/boyslove Reddit thread that basically timelined all of the Thai BL production companies that are the major players essentially. So thank you for them for doing all that fun and hard work.
For the sake of structure and my very overstimulated brain, I am going to divide this video into 3 parts with some subparts. I'll explain. First, we're gonna talk a little bit about the popularization of BL and yaoi in the global stage, and then I'm gonna get into the problem of mixing ads with stories, and third, I'm going to talk a little bit about the implications of all this and what this means in society and capitalism and all of that fun stuff. The early 2000s were a time for yaoi and BL media to be in the global stage, at least for the first time ever. Specifically in 2001 at the anime convention, YaoiCon happening brought so much to the table. This led to licensing English language translation of various yaoi mangas.
So that means there is a lot of history there. However, I'm today more focused in talking about the 2010s and 20s because that's when yaoi and BL influence work, specifically from Thailand and China, saw themselves on the larger mainstreaming services and platforms. These works range from web novels, films, miniseries, and so on. This access to the mainstream came with an increasing spotlight from internet pockets to YouTube international subtitle content got the worst pairing of all time, capitalism.
My entry point was either Sotis or Lovesick, which are shows that I have really tender feelings toward because they really allowed me to be introduced into the world of BL in a way that I've never been able to do. Yeah, sure, before I was reading mostly shoujo or shonen manga or watching them. So getting a more layered representation that spoke to different parts of my identity felt really affirming. It would be foolish to ignore the commercial success of BL in this framing. According to Time Magazine Thailand investment promotion arm helped secure 360 million baht or 10.7 million in an investment for Thai BL. I just want you to sit with that number. That is $10.7 million. And that is an estimation at most. This may seem modest by the standards of Hollywood, but it represents BL and a new export-oriented mindset that GMMTV has already made deals with Japan TV, Aussie, and the Philippines, as well as broadcast ABS and CBN. I don't know about you guys, but it's giving very much capitalism. Deeply. So of course, it's not surprising to see about 3 to 6 ads per episode, and sometimes more than 1 per part. So we can see our favorite characters confess their loves and act a fool, but with a twist.
I don't know if it was clear enough, but capitalism is the twist. I just want to make it obvious.
I didn't learn a lot in university, but one of the most impactful classes I've ever taken is this journalism marketing class where we critically looked at media influence and how a good narrative enhances engagement for people to buy more stuff. And one of the most important concepts I learned from that class was about native advertisements. So, what is native advertisement? To understand all the phenomenon of BLs and gmmtv and the mix of ads with stories, we really need to understand what native advertisements are. Native advertising is a paid media designed to match the content of the media source.
When I think of successful native advertising content, I think of BuzzFeed. They even say it in their content if you really look closely. According to this article by TechCrunch analyzing how BuzzFeed interacts with native advertisement, it talks about how native advertisement inherently is not evil. It goes on to say, content would be so good that we wouldn't care if something was organic or an ad. Yet right now, I think a lot of people can't tell the difference, and it could get worse if companies like BuzzFeed get more cavalier about camouflaging native ads, say by minimizing or removing the warning labels. And my grievances lie exactly there, with the quality of the content being diluted by the ads.
In the case of BLs, that would look like a character you got to know throughout several episodes using a product as a way to confess, expose, or create vulnerabilities within the story. Native advertising also often outperforms traditional ads. Studies have shown that even though users are aware that content was paid for, native advertising gets a higher engagement than traditional advertising methods. This could be because content can be consumed in a way that's natural and intuitive to the user's regular media consumption. Personally, my issue is not that BL stories are on the global stage or even we have sponsorship for these shows. I understand the reason for needing capital. I'm not unaware. I know we do need specific investments, the monetary kind, to make shows like this possible. My issue was having stories being weaved with these products that usually are pushing to be relevant in these stories. With overblown budgets, gimmicky marketing ideas, abundantly tacky product placement and sponsorship for content, sometimes it seems like some shows actually end up being an ad mostly with some storytelling to interrupt in the middle. In other words, they seem to be a vehicle for advertising. There is a reasoning behind why companies take sponsorships on. Fundraising is a necessary evil to make most art visible, especially on the global stage, at least within the systems we live in right now. In addition, there's many pieces to it, from being able to pay for the crew, other staff, having an elaborate production value, licensing, and everything in between. Long story short, that comes down to a lot of dough. And my grievances mostly lie with companies caring more about entangling ads within stories as opposed to deepening or exploring the story at hand.
In the recent Thai adaptation of the 2021's Japanese BL Cherry Magic, many things may be lacking in this new reimagining, but ads are not one of them. On episode 4 of Cherry Magic, what is supposed to be a cute moment to connect between Archie and Karen's character played by Nui and Tae-Tae-wan ends up being a bait, a victim of adpocalypse. It could have been a development for Karen and Archie's relationship. Rather, it ends up being another moment for gmmtv to capitalize on Nivea cleanser? I don't know. Similarly, what ended up becoming one of my favorite shows a year after it aired, Vice Versa, had a similar uncharacteristic moment for the characters. I mean, multiple times. First of all, I love me some Jimmy and C, and the story of Vice Versa is good, but it had so many ads that I could not get through it the first time I watched it. It took a second and a third time to really get into it. In one instance was supposed to be a sweet moment with Tele and Puen, played by Jimmy and C. After finding out the details of the lore, the portkey stuff, they somehow integrate the Oishi drink once again. It doesn't stop there. One of my first BL shows with Kristen Singto, Sotas, had one of the most shameless product placements I will never forget. It was for a Head & Shoulders shampoo. How much did Head & Shoulders pay you? There were slow motions and everything. Even what's supposed to be an 8-episode miniseries like
Moonlight Chicken doesn't escape the apocalypse, as the main characters feed their cat at least 14 times in a span of 8 episodes. That is multiple cat-related ads that the screenwriter or the director, whoever the sad chap happens to be, had to be creative to weave a cat food commercial into a story about grief, sexuality, relationships ending, disability, and so many more important and necessary things that get overshadowed constantly. So you clicked on this video that says, do gmmtv ads make stories and moments cheap? And I'm not gonna make you wait until the end of the video. I think yes. If I'm following a story that is with characters I'm deeply in tune with, a disruption like drinking a familiar oishi, or a character that has been standoffish randomly starting to go off about a product they've never referred to in other parts of the show, all of the sudden is kind of disruptive. It's a little bit weird. It's uncanny. It doesn't add anything to the characters. If anything, it actually creates a different narrative about these characters that we're getting to know. These moments of disruption serve as an interruption from the real story, and while that's happening, as audiences, we just wait for the ads to pass on. This is an indication that this has become a default. To me, that takes you out of the story, that takes you out of the characters, that takes you out of the flow. I actually don't mind a designated space within episodes just for ads, as long as it doesn't really interflow within the story. I'm not anti-ad, I am anti-disruption of the story that I am following. This specific method is a disservice to the creators and the team. Product placement is probably one of the oldest tricks of capitalism. It's been around for a very long time. It just feels like we're breaking the fourth wall, but the story never required it. Although breaking the fourth wall is one of my favorite tropes, when it's happening constantly throughout an episode, then you kind of get detached, disembodied from the overall story. So I think it does affect the overall quality of the show. And by that definition, it does end up making it cheap, and moments are reduced to a very expensive ad. And even in Hollywood, there has been very obvious product placements that you kind of knew was happening as it's happening, but it did not disrupt the flow of the story. While Thai BL dramas have been on brand for having a plethora of ads at the most random moments, we don't really see that in Japanese shows, and absolutely there is a lot less Japanese BLs than there are Thai BLs. So the fundraising game, I'm sure, looks very, very different. But there is a reason why Japanese BLs don't feel cheap, even when the budget is pretty low for the most part. The fact that there's not a constant bombardment of apocalypse makes it feel like a cohesive story being laid out, rather than a bunch of ads stringed together with some interruption of stories. It's really hard to eradicate sponsorships from BLs overall, but there has been a way for these companies to curb the type, the frequency, and the methodology of ads that are being placed within these shows. At the end of the day, it's affecting stories' qualities, and it doesn't feel like an organic storytelling that is there just to share. The gag is BL lives within queer media and queer stories, and we're not able to see queer stories unless it's a mode of delivering ads to as many people as possible. What does that say about our value of telling the stories as authentically and as deeply as possible? That's not a question I have an answer to, or really anyone does, but it is something I sit with often. The biggest takeaway for me is that if you're going to have a very disruptive storytelling with an abundance of ads that have nothing to do with the story or have something to do because they have to, it's going to be really, really hard to make a high quality story. You're not taking enough time to deepen the exploration of the characters. You're not taking enough time to create expansive worlds where the story can breathe, elongate. There's a reason why BL stories like I Told Sunset About You, I Feel You Linger in the Air, Wolf Ash and Cupcake are some of my favorite stories. There's a great deal of time that the creators have taken to craft the world where the characters feel fleshed out. The visuals are stunning, the storytelling is top notch. And most importantly, there is very little distraction. Now, I just want to make it clear I'm not claiming that the less ads or no ads there are, the beautifully complicated and stunning story is waiting for us. That would be a false binary. I think many shows have demonstrated, even when that's the case, the story is not always going to be good.
I don't want to make a video where I'm not contextualizing this and how these ads are actually influencing people. There's no doubt about it. A lot of these, which I've defined as uncanny, disruptive ads, don't bother some people. Some people see it perhaps as a price for consuming their favorite characters, stories, and their favorite actors. For instance, to get a glimpse of things, if you go through the Reddit thread under r/gmmtv, the question, did gmmtv ads do their job, gets answered with enthusiastic answers like, I was definitely craving KFC after vice versa, but thankfully that passed. Or, I drink Oishi green tea every time I'm in Thailand, lol. And my favorite, not gonna lie, I bought some Nivea products after seeing some people tenderly remove each other's makeup way too many times. So people may not think about it, or from the ones that get annoyed or cringed out, they would probably view it as a sacrifice that we are bombarded with in other spaces in the same way like K-pop. So why should BLs be different? I just want to acknowledge I understand that perspective and I even see the logic. However, for one, I'm an overthinker, so this is a way for me to think out loud. And two, I like to spend time exploring what the world and art spaces would look like if capitalism wasn't the leading point.
Even with amazing shows like My School President or Moonlight Chicken from GMMTV, you have to look away when the ad moments happen. At the end of the day, filmmaking is an art that has many elements to it. When the shows you make become defaulted by ads being a large part of it, you're creating a world where narratives are built with some limitations and predictable disruptions, reminding audiences they're watching is being paid by whatever ad they're watching. And that is bleak, I don't know, even dystopian. I come to stories to get away from the constant bombardment of ads and commercialization that I witness. When I watch my stories or read my stories, I like to be confronted with minimal or no advertisement. I don't think that's too much to ask, right?